そうですね。15年。
Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO. Checking out a brand new retrospective starting today that I'm calling the Arthur Chronicles A Night to Remember, where I'm going to review every single mainline entry in the Ghosts and Goblins or Ghouls N Ghosts franchise. And of course, we're going to do this one in chronological order, so we have to start all the way back in 1985 with the original Ghosts and Goblins. And it's wild to think that I was all of 1 year old when this game came out in arcades. I don't know if it's worse that I'm older than this franchise or this franchise is near as old as I am. Before getting far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But it's wild to think that this series is turning 40 years old this year. It's getting its 40th anniversary. It all started with Ghosts and Goblins on the Capcom arcade board. And as we get our first introduction to Red Armorer here, an enemy that's going to haunt you the entire franchise. This is just such an iconic game, and this is where the entire franchise gets its start. It also gets its start in absolutely cruel difficulty because this game will kill you in new and inventive ways every single time you play it. I've only ever once or twice defeated the first loop, and I have never once defeated the entire game. And trust me, this game will troll you like that floating bridge right there. It is out to steal your lunch money, get all those quarters out of your pocket, and smile while it's doing it. But the best part is, even though you die time and time again, you can't help but have fun the entirety of the game. And that's the thing about retrospectives and franchises. They have to start somewhere, and Ghosts and Goblins is just an incredible start. And it leads us to so many fun games like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins, even Demon's Crest, one of my favorite Super Nintendo games of all time that technically isn't an action platformer, but is more of a Metroidvania style game. As we make our way through the first world here, what an iconic franchise. Arthur trying to save Princess Prin. It goes on and on. Every single game basically just retreads some familiar territory, but they add new mechanics and to basically make it feel fresh every single time. And I love that. As we fight what look to be pigs in a blanket here, every single character is iconic in this game. Arthur in his boxer shorts after he loses his armor. This game definitely plays around with comedy and it works to perfect effect. As we get to the first boss here, having played this game a decent amount, I can tell you some bosses can be cheesed. If you keep this big dude at the corner of the screen, he's basically just going to hop up and down, giving you a free fight, but you want to avoid that torch. It is absolutely, in my opinion, the worst weapon in the game. But that is the fun thing. Right at the beginning, in this franchise, you got that choice of weapons. Some are going to be great for some screens, some are going to be terrible. You kind of have to decide what works for you, but if you get stuck with a bad weapon, the game will become absolutely impossible in some really fun and frustrating ways. And again, I can't stress enough just how difficult this game is. There are troll deaths all over the place. It's the original Kaizo game, even if it has nothing to do with Mario, but that's kind of what the series is known for. And I feel like that difficulty can be traced forward into so many different arcade games, even stuff like Bloodborne, all of the Demon Souls games. They are difficult in a way that I feel like this franchise actually started off. Because if you played this in arcade, you'd have to bring absolutely like a laundry bag of money just to try to see the ending, and even then you might not be able to make it through, because you will see I take a lot of deaths in this playthrough. But as far as the game is concerned, graphically, it looked incredible for 1985, and I love kind of the demon world it takes place in. These gigantic pigs that are just going to basically vomit down below, all of the different flying enemies. It works so well to build an entire universe that has been inhabited for the last 40 years now. All of the bosses, all of the storyline, it is just such iconic arcade history. Now, interestingly enough, I didn't first play this game in arcades because I was obviously 1 year old, and I probably didn't have the manual dexterity to control a joystick, and even today this game absolutely destroys me 10 out of 10 times. I played this originally on the NES, where I feel like most people actually got their start in the franchise, and while that was an excellent port, years later I did get a chance to play the arcade version in arcades. Now obviously we have it on MiSTer FPGA as well as MAME, so there's no wrong way to play this game. The only wrong way to play it is to not play it in the first place. But there is so much strategy as well. You can basically move the enemies around the screen, move these giant demons here, and basically keep yourself safe. It also has one of the most iconic soundtracks in gaming. Listen, and I'll be right back. Absolutely iconic music that I could hum in my head anytime I want to, along with the Bubble Symphony soundtrack, as well as a couple Mario and Sonic games. And I know full well if I ever forget how the music in this game goes, I must have some brain issue, because it is just branded in there. And as we take on the boss of the second stage, just two bosses of the first stage, that kiting trick and keeping them at the edge of the screen will work. But after you get past this stage, the game absolutely becomes ultimately hard, and I do love that about it, but I understand why it does turn some people off. If you haven't played this game before and you come to it from a modern perspective, not having played a ton of arcade games, you may only end up getting past stage 1 and basically giving up on the game. So I do have to say, as far as a modern audience is concerned, the difficulty in this one can sometimes feel ever so slightly cheap. I love it for being that difficult, but I understand that some people just get turned off by this game. So leave me a comment down below and you tell me, is the difficulty appropriate for this one, or do you think maybe they should have eased up ever so slightly? For me, again, the challenge is the fun, but that second loop, which we'll talk about in just a minute, that does feel like the cruel pain point in the entire game. But there's so much strategy here. Every single enemy has a pattern. Every single thing has a way to kind of manipulate it. Even Red Armor here can be moved around the screen. If you know his move patterns and know what he wants to do with your jumps and attacks, you can basically keep yourself relatively safe. It has been a few years since I played this one from start to finish. I don't remember everything, but jumping away from him and shooting backwards usually gets him to just drop down right in front of you in your line of attack. And I do keep the knife here, not the most powerful weapon, but it shoots very quickly and can stun stagger a few of the enemies, so it does end up being very useful. And just when you think you've gotten past the worst of it, they throw two red armors at you, an absolute death trap if there ever was one. And that is the thing about this game. It is going to hand you your ass 10 out of 10 times you play it, but 10 out of 10 times you're going to have a smile on your face when you're actually playing the title. It hasn't aged as well as the sequel, but honestly, that is one of those things. It's fun to talk about from retrospective fashion, just where this franchise came from, because Ghouls N Ghosts definitely is my preferred of the two arcade games, but this one still holds up relatively well. And you'll see here, you can even accidentally kite a red armor into the boss fight with this dragon, and then you're going to have even more pain. But I was able to kind of just keep myself safe there. We grab the key and we move to the next level. And once you get to this point in the game, all bets are off. The difficulty is an 11 out of 10, and you are going to suffer. That's the interesting thing about this game. If you are good at it, if you're a speedrunner, you can beat the game in like 8 to 9 minutes on the first loop. But if you are not good at the game, if you haven't played it recently, it might take you 4 or 5 hours of learning just to see the ending of the first loop. And don't forget, like pretty much every game in the franchise, you have to beat the game twice, and the second loop is going to maximize the difficulty even further, giving you one of the hardest challenges in your life. I don't think I will ever beat the second loop on this game, and I don't think I'll ever actually spend the time trying. The first loop is good enough for me. But one more soundtrack sample, because again, iconic music, some of the best in arcade history. 30 seconds and I'll be right back with a little bit more to talk about. Absolutely incredible music, and from this point on you might notice I am using invincibility here and there to try to get to the end of the game, because if I actually spent the time to capture this and try to beat the game without any sort of aids, it would probably take me a week to actually get this one video out. So I do that every once in a while, but I always tell you when I am using a little bit of a cheat here and there, and honestly that's totally fine. If you just want to experience the game, make it a little bit easier on yourself, because having to fight these two demons with a red armor on screen at the same time is going to break your brain if you try to do it straight unless you practice. But it is just insane to think that this game is going to be 40 years old this year as of September. It's been a franchise I've been playing my entire life, and we did just recently, like 5 years ago, get a new entry into the series, and I hope to keep getting Ghouls N Ghosts or Ghosts and Goblins, whatever the hell they want to call them, entries in the franchise, because every 7 or 8 years I want to spend like 40 hours banging my head against the proverbial wall trying to beat this game. And you will see here, you can't even get to the final boss unless you bring the right weapon in, the shield, and I am definitely cheating here, because this one to me always feels nigh impossible. But we have 11 more videos coming up. We're going to do all the mainline games. We're going to do some of the spin-offs as well, even the weird puzzle game in the franchise. But we are done at second loop time, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.